The unexpected encounter? The fluorescent lights of the city bus flickered weakly as it rumbled through the empty streets at nearly midnight. Nina Rodriguez clutched her 8-month-old son, Oliver, closer to her chest, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Her shift at the diner had run 3 hours over because 2 servers had called in sick. And now Oliver was cranky from being away from home for so long. "Baby, please," she whispered, gently bouncing him as his whimpers grew louder.
The other
passengers on the bus were already giving her looks. She could feel their irritation radiating toward her like heat from a fire. A gruff voice from behind her cut through the air. "Can you keep that kid quiet? Some of us have been working all day and just want to get home in peace." Nina's cheeks burned with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, he's just tired and hungry." "I'm trying to—" Oliver's cries suddenly escalated into full-blown wails that seemed to echo off every surface of the bus. The sound was piercing, and Nina felt tears of frustration building in her own eyes. She had been on her feet for 12 hours, her back ached, and she still had to walk 4 blocks from the bus stop to their tiny apartment. "Ma'am, I need you to get that baby under control," the bus driver called from the front, his voice stern. "You're disturbing everyone." Nina tried everything she could think of. She rocked Oliver, made soft shushing sounds, even tried singing quietly, but nothing worked. The baby seemed determined to let everyone know exactly how unhappy he was. Other passengers were pulling out their phones, some to record her struggles, others to put in earbuds to block out the noise. That's when she heard a gentle voice beside her. "Excuse me, would you mind if I tried something?" Nina turned to see a man sitting across the aisle. He appeared to be in his early 30s, wearing a well-tailored charcoal gray coat that looked expensive but not flashy. His dark hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his brown eyes held a warmth that immediately put her at ease. "I have a nephew," he continued with a soft smile. "Sometimes a different pair of arms can work." Wonders. Nina hesitated. Every instinct told her to be cautious, to not trust strangers, especially with her baby. But Oliver's cries were getting more desperate, and she was at her wit's end. The judgment from the other passengers was becoming unbearable. I don't even know you," she said, her voice barely audible over Oliver's wailing. "Chen," he replied, moving to sit in the seat directly across from her. "I work downtown, and I take this bus route every night after late meetings. I've seen you a few times before, actually. You always look like you're carrying the weight of the world, but you never complain." There was something in his voice, a sincerity that made Nina's defenses lower just a fraction. She looked down at Oliver, whose face was red and streaked with tears, then back at David. "Okay," she whispered, carefully transferring her son into David's waiting arms. The change was almost immediate. David held Oliver against his chest, one hand supporting the baby's head, while the other rubbed gentle circles on his back. He began to hum a soft melody, something Nina didn't recognize but found soothing. Within minutes, Oliver's cries had reduced to hiccups, and then to sleepy whimpers. "How did you do that?" Nina asked in amazement, watching her son's eyelids grow heavy. "My sister has 3 kids," David explained in a quiet voice, still humming softly. "I've had plenty of practice with fussy babies. Sometimes they just need a change of scenery, or in this case, a change of arms." Nina felt her own body finally beginning to relax for the first time all day. The tension in her shoulders started to ease, and she realized just how exhausted she truly was. She hadn't had a full night's sleep in months, not since Oliver had been born and her life had turned completely upside down. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done if you would have figured it out," David interrupted gently. "You're doing an incredible job. Being a parent isn't easy, especially when you're doing it alone." Nina's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't mentioned being a single mother, but somehow David seemed to understand her situation without judgment. There was something about the way he held Oliver with such care and natural confidence that made her feel safe. As the bus continued its route through the quiet city streets, Nina found her eyelids growing heavy. The combination of physical exhaustion, emotional relief, and the gentle swaying of the bus was making it impossible to stay awake. She tried to fight it, tried to stay alert, but her body had other plans. "It's okay," David said softly, noticing her struggle. "Rest for a few minutes. I've got him." Ow. Against her better judgment, Nina allowed herself to lean back in her seat. Her eyes drifted closed, and within moments, she had fallen into the deepest sleep she'd had in weeks. Her head gradually tilted to the side, coming to rest against David's shoulder. David didn't move. He continued to hold Oliver, who had now fallen completely asleep, while Nina rested against him. An elderly woman sitting nearby, Mrs. Patterson, smiled at the scene and whispered, "You're a good man, helping her like that." David simply nodded, careful not to disturb either of his sleeping companions. He found himself studying Nina's face, noting the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of countless sleepless nights, the worry lines that seemed too deep for someone so young. Her dark hair had escaped from its ponytail, framing her face in soft waves. Even in sleep, she looked like she was carrying heavy burdens. For the next 20 minutes, David sat perfectly still, serving as a pillow for a stranger who clearly needed rest more than she needed pride. Oliver slept peacefully in his arms, occasionally making soft baby noises that made David smile. He couldn't help but wonder about Nina's story, about what circumstances had led her to be taking a midnight bus with a baby looking like she was, barely holding everything together. When the bus reached Nina's stop, David gently shook her shoulder. "Miss, this is your stop?" Nina jolted awake, immediately disoriented and embarrassed. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep on you." "I must have been you needed the rest," David said simply, carefully transferring Oliver back to her arms. The baby stirred slightly, but remained asleep. "Don't apologize for being human." As Nina gathered her things and prepared to get off the bus, she turned back to David. "I don't know how to thank you. What you did tonight? ... It meant everything." David smiled, that same warm expression that had first put her at ease. "Take care of yourself and that little guy. He's lucky to have you as his mom." Nina stepped off the bus and turned to wave goodbye, but David was already looking out the window at her with a thoughtful expression. As the bus pulled away, she stood on the sidewalk for a moment, still feeling the warmth of his kindness. Walking the 4 blocks home, she found herself thinking about the stranger who had shown her more compassion in one evening than she'd experienced in months. She didn't even know his last name or where he worked, but something told her that their paths would cross again. The life-changing decision 3 days had passed since the bus encounter. But Nina couldn't stop thinking about David Chen every time she looked at Oliver. She remembered how peacefully he had slept in the stranger's arms, how safe she had felt, resting against his shoulder. It seemed like a dream now, too good to be true. She was wiping down tables at Murphy's Diner during the lunch rush when the bell above the door chimed. Nina looked up from her work and nearly dropped the wet rag in her hand. David Chen stood in the doorway, scanning the small restaurant until his eyes found hers. "Hi," he said, approaching her table with that same gentle smile she remembered. "I hope you don't mind me tracking you down. I asked around and someone mentioned you worked here." Nina's heart began racing. She smoothed down her uniform and tried to look more presentable, suddenly aware of how different she must appear in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the diner compared to the dim bus. "David, hi, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice slightly breathless. "I wanted to see how you and Oliver were doing," he replied, then paused. "Actually, that's not entirely true. I have something I'd like to discuss with you if you have a few minutes." Nina glanced around the diner. Her boss, Mr. Murphy, was in the back office, and the lunch crowd was starting to thin out. "I have a short break coming up. Can you wait?" "About 10 minutes? Of course." David took a seat at the counter and ordered coffee while Nina finished her tasks. She kept stealing glances at him, trying to understand why he was here. Men like David, successful, well-dressed, clearly from a different world than hers, didn't usually seek out tired single mothers who worked at diners. When her break finally came, Nina poured herself a cup of coffee and sat beside him. "Okay, what did you want to talk about?" David turned to face her fully, his expression serious but kind. "I've been thinking about our conversation on the bus. About what you said regarding doing everything alone. I have a proposition for you." Nina's stomach tightened. She'd heard propositions from men before, and they usually weren't the kind that led anywhere good. "What kind of proposition?" she asked carefully. "A job," David said simply. "I run a tech company downtown. We've been looking for someone to head up our new community outreach program, someone who understands what it's like to struggle, too. Need help, but be too proud to ask for it." Nina stared at him in disbelief. "You want to offer me a job? You don't even know me. You don't know my qualifications or my experience, or I know you're working multiple shifts to support your son." David interrupted gently. "I know you're exhausted, but you never give up. I know you treat strangers with kindness even when you're at your breaking point. Those are the qualifications that matter for this position." "I don't understand," Nina said, shaking her head. "Why me? Why are you doing this?" David was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. "My company has been successful, more successful than I ever imagined when I started it 5 years ago. But lately I've been feeling like something was missing. We donate money to charities, sure, but it feels disconnected, impersonal." He paused, to take a sip of his coffee before continuing. "When I met you on the bus, when I saw how hard you're working just to get by, it reminded me of something important. Real change happens when you connect with people directly. You understand their struggles because you've been there yourself." Nina felt overwhelmed. "David, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't accept charity. I have to make my own way." "This isn't charity," David said firmly. "This is a job with a real salary, benefits, and responsibilities. I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I believe you'd be incredible at it." Nina could respond. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "What's wrong?" David asked, immediately noticing her change in expression. "Oliver's daycare," Nina said, her voice tight with worry. "He's got a high fever. They need me to pick him up immediately and take him to a doctor." Nina stood up quickly, already reaching for her purse. "I have to go. My boss is going to be furious, but I can't leave Oliver sick at daycare. I'll drive you," David said, standing as well. "You don't have to, Nina," David said, his voice gentle but firm. "Let me help. Please." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a pediatric clinic waiting room. Oliver was flushed and fussy in Nina's arms, his tiny body burning with fever. David had not only driven them to the clinic, but had also quietly paid the receptionist for the visit when Nina wasn't looking. "The doctor will see you now," the nurse called. After the examination, Dr. Rodriguez, no relation to Nina, despite the shared surname, assured them that Oliver had a common viral infection that would resolve with rest and medication. David drove them to the pharmacy and then to Nina's apartment, carrying the sleeping baby while Nina fumbled with her keys. "Thank you," Nina said once they were inside her small living space. She felt embarrassed about the cramped conditions, the secondhand furniture, the laundry basket overflowing in the corner. "For everything today. The ride, the doctor visit." "I know you paid for it. You would have done the same for someone else," David replied, gently placing Oliver in his crib. Nina sank into her worn couch, suddenly feeling the weight of everything. "Would I have? I'm not so sure anymore. It feels like I'm so focused on just surviving that I've forgotten how to really live, how to help other people." David sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "That's exactly why I want you to consider the job offer. You haven't forgotten how to help people, Nina. You've just been so busy taking care of everyone, else that you've forgotten to take care of yourself." Nina looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that she hadn't expected. It wasn't pity or even just kindness. It was respect, admiration, and something deeper that made her heart skip. "Why do I get the feeling this isn't just about the job?" she asked softly. David smiled, that warm expression that had first drawn her to trust him. "Because you're very perceptive."
Oh, you're right.
"It's not just about the job. From the moment I saw you on that bus, trying so hard to keep everything together, while the world seemed to be falling apart around you, I couldn't stop thinking about you, David. ... Double quotes, Nina began, but he held up a gentle hand.
I'm not asking
"You to make any decisions about anything other than the job right now," he said. "But I want you to know that What I feel for you is real. You've reminded me what matters in life, what it means to have real strength and courage." Nina felt tears building in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I've been disappointed so many times, let down by people I trusted. Oliver's father left the moment things got difficult. I don't know if I can handle that kind of pain again." "Then don't think about forever," David said, reaching over to take her hand. "Just think about tomorrow, about giving yourself a chance at something better. Take the job, see what happens. I promise you, whatever develops between us personally, I will never leave you stranded professionally." Nina looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth and strength in his fingers. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she could breathe deeply. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll take the job." David's face lit up with genuine joy. "Really? Really?" Nina confirmed, then smiled. "But I have one condition." "Anything. If we're going to work together, if we're going to explore whatever this is between us, then we do it honestly. No more mysterious gestures. No more showing up with solutions to problems I haven't told you about. We figure things out together. As equals," David nodded seriously. "I can live with that." As if on cue, Oliver began crying from his crib. Both Nina and David stood up, but David gestured for her to sit back down. "Let me," he said. "I have a feeling this is going to be a team effort from now on." Nina watched as David went to comfort her son, and for the first time since Oliver had been born, she didn't feel like she was facing the world alone. She had found something she didn't even know she was looking for: a partner, a teammate, and maybe, just maybe, the love of her life. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Nina felt hopeful about what tomorrow might bring.